Hello and welcome everybody to the Green Spaces February Lunch and Learn. This month is going to be about planning a zero waste day with Cris Angsten and Wright. So this is going to be about event planning and other details for reducing, reusing, recycling, and diverting as much waste from landfill as we can. For the introduction, I have the pleasure of introducing a new staff member. So Madison Rawlings just joined us a few weeks ago. She is our Director of Programs and Events, and I will let her take it from here.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I am going on week 3 at Green Spaces. I am a local to the area, and I'm coming from Habitat for Humanity, where I spent several years there doing a lot of similar work in terms of communications. I'm looking forward very much to working with Green Spaces on their programming, as sustainability is my background in education and something I want to do, and I'm very passionate about moving forward. So from there, I can go ahead and introduce Green Spaces. And if you are unfamiliar with Green Spaces, then our mission is advancing the sustainability of living, working, and building in the Chattanooga and the surrounding region. And we are very grateful for you coming out to our Lunch and Learn today, and not as much coming out as clicking in to join us. We're looking forward to having some more in-person Lunch and Learns in the future. Some announcements before we go forward and get started into the Lunch and Learn is, first of all, our integrated community sustainability plan. This is a community-informed plan that has been gathered over the past few years that Green Spaces has been working on, and encompasses sustainability, excuse me, and all the pillars and how we would like to see Chattanooga going forward, and incorporating sustainability into the culture of Chattanooga. We are working closely with the city of Chattanooga for its adoption and implementation into strategies for Chattanooga. So if you haven't read it or would like to know more about it, you can visit our website with the link below, and we would love to hear your feedback on it. Another one of our significant programs is the Empower program, where we show residents how to implement no and low cost solutions to lower the energy burden on their homes. And that really amounts to decreasing energy consumption for them and increasing savings. We service the Hamilton County area, Meigs, McMinn, Ray, and Polk. And then recently, some more exciting things is that we have expanded into Marion, Grundy, Sequatchie, and Bledsoe. And we are looking for some outreach coordinators in those areas. So if you know anybody that lives in that area, in those communities, send them our way, and we will see if they are a good fit for our team. But Empower is really part of the living portion of furthering sustainability in the living, working, and building. Our Green Leader program is a professional certification, and it is open to any and all in Chattanooga, whether that is for professional or personal development. And it's how to become a sustainability champion, and it incorporates sustainability within your business and personal life. Our Green Leader certification is through UTC Center of Professional Education. And if you want to learn more about that, you can find out about it on our website or contact me directly. Sort of a jumping off pad from our Green Leader is our Green Light program, which is for business certification. And we have many businesses in Chattanooga that have become Green Light certified and implemented measures to reduce their waste, to reduce their energy consumption, and incorporate more sustainability in the culture of their businesses. We're always recruiting more green light businesses. And if you know anybody, please contact me directly. The most exciting thing that's happening in my world right now is the Green Prix. I'm organizing very closely with our partners, the Sports Car Club of America and the Hamilton County Schools. Our Green Prix is a education program, but it's a very hands-on education program where we buy kits for middle, elementary school, and high school students, and they form teams and they create electric vehicles and race them themselves. We are approaching faster than I can believe the Green Prix season, and the race will be May 6th and 7th. It is we still have room for more sponsors, and we really hope to see you guys out there. If you have any more questions about it, of course, contact me directly. And speaking of our partners, we want to thank our founding partners, Compass Commissioning and Designs and Franklin Architects. And our further members, we have membership as a part of Green Spaces, and it helps us be able to continue to do the things that we do. Our golden corporate level sponsor, BMC Office Technology, silver level corporate sponsors, Berry and Hunt, Scenic City Solar. Our bronze level corporate sponsors, Nuterra, Modus Build, Green Strategies, Rock Ridge, and Grace Frank Group. And then many of our green level members who are on the slide that you can see. I won't read them all out for you. We also have memberships available to nonprofits so that they can also implement those strategies. If you are interested in becoming a member, we don't just have corporate and business and nonprofit memberships. We have individual memberships, and they really are open to everyone, and they start as little as $10 a month for an individual. We also have student memberships and $49 a month for corporate. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Cris and Brian and thank them again very much for sharing their time with us today. And we're all very eager to learn about planning a zero waste special day. Cris, Brian, I'm going to stop sharing the screen now and you can take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Madison, and welcome to the team.
Thank you.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, so we're very excited to be talking with you today about planning a zero waste event. This is an extremely fun topic because there's no one way to do it, right? And every time I have this type of discussion, I learn something new. Me and Cris have had probably about 4 meetings, and each time we've come up with a new idea or something that's pretty cool. So really excited for this discussion. And we're going to kind of from a perspective. So Cris is a venue owner, so she'll take the perspective of being a venue, trying to encourage clients and maybe more environmentally conscious clients to have a zero waste wedding, environmentally friendly wedding. And I'll take kind of the role of the client, approaching perhaps a venue or vendors that are less sustainability minded, and how you can kind of navigate that. So interesting for me, in my day-to-day role, I've always been on the venue side. So I currently work at Mercedes-Benz Stadium as a project manager. We're on the zero waste journey, so to speak. So very familiar with that. Was previously at Finley Stadium in Chattanooga for a number of years, which was great, and went to UTC and from Chattanooga. So that's kind of my background, but my wife and I got engaged in 2019. So we're planning a normal wedding day, and then COVID hit. All of a sudden, we didn't have any events at work, so I was at home a lot. My wife was studying for the bar exam as we were getting closer to our wedding. So I kind of became the de facto wedding planner, groomzilla, so to speak. and really kind of dove into wedding planning, which was something I never thought I would do. But we had a ton of fun with it. As we started getting quotes and talking with different vendors, we kept coming back to me like, that's expensive. I can't believe that. And we kept going back to, well, we can do that. We can do that ourselves. And so all of a sudden we were kind of creating this event that was very kind of uniquely us. And an extension of that was, we recycle, we backyard compost. So we were like, let's impose this on all our friends and family and kind of have a zero waste wedding. And it was such a fun experience and really kind of added a whole extra element to it that I'm excited to kind of dive into it with you. So I'll pass it over to Cris to introduce herself.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Cris Angsten. My husband and I own Oak Leaf Cottage. We are primarily a wedding venue. Every once in a while, we'll do corporate events, but it's pretty rare. But we are located in Trenton, Georgia. We're on the side of Lookout Mountain, and we border Cloudland Canyon State Park. And so we are entirely in this very foresty, beautiful location. And we've always been very environmentally conscious to begin with. So we've always composted our food waste. We've always sorted our trash. We've always done all those things. And since we were pretty much building this place ourselves, this place used to be a residence. We kind of started out as an Airbnb for the cottage part while we were working on finishing the barn. And so I was just sorting the trash after every event or after every weekend stay. And whenever that it got to events, I thought we could pretty much run it the same way. And so about 6 months in on having actual weddings, we had a bit of a wake-up call when we found out just how wasteful weddings could actually be. So our wake-up call was a 60-person wedding. We're not a big venue to begin with, but our max is 125. And we had 2 truckloads of trash after we finished sorting. So I sorted through everything, then my husband sorted through everything. We looked at each other, we were like, come on. So we went back through it, and no, it really was nothing was recyclable, nothing was compostable, nothing was something that we could put on, say, the Everything Wedding Chattanooga Facebook page, which is a really great resource if you are a wedding couple and you're looking for using something from previous wedding. A lot of couples are selling their stuff on there. But there was absolutely nothing that we could do. And I know that night, neither of us slept. We were just so overwhelmed, and we were just what do we do? Because we can't run ourselves this way. And so we were how do we make changes? And so in the morning, we started talking about it, and we said, okay, how can we get more buy-in with our couples and make it to where maybe our goal is this extreme thing, 1 bag of trash. And I'm happy to report that most of our weddings do actually wind up with only 1 bag of trash at the end. It is a contractor size bag. It's not a little bitty bag. We just started making a lot of changes from there, and kind of started working more with our couples more and more to help them see here's the whole process and how it can be done. So I'm excited to walk through some of that with you guys today.
Yeah, so Cris, someone comes forward to you, loves the idea, loves the concept. Where do they start?
With us, usually what I do is after they've signed a contract with us, and this doesn't help y'all too much, we actually have a wedding planning guide. And part of that wedding planning guide, I have a few tidbits here and there that kind of talks about what you can do to kind of reduce the waste. Here's where you could rent a couple of things. A lot of send-off items tend to be a pretty big question, what you can do, because that is one of the most favorite photos ever, is where everybody's throwing confetti or something else at everybody in celebration as you come back up the aisle or as you're leaving the venue at the end of the night. And so coming up with ways to reuse things, have gifts on the table that are something that your guests will enjoy and keep forever. So we kind of work with a lot of different aspects of the wedding planning process from start to finish. And so this slide is basically what we're going to be walking through with you guys today. So we're just going to kind of walk through each of these sections.
And what I found really helpful when we got into it was the zero waste mindset. You hear, reduce, reuse, recycle a lot, but when you actually take a lot of the aspects of planning an event and think through it in that order, it really does simplify it a lot to where being able to refuse first, reduce and reuse, you can have so much fun with it. And that's a lot of what we'll be talking about today, before you even get to the recycled element of it. So I found that mindset really helpful. But where I got started was actually emailing Michael Walton and asking, what vendors, who could I work with out there to help us get to this goal. So utilizing local resources like Green Spaces and others, or anyone on this group is clearly interested in it and has ideas. So that's kind of started and just broke it down piece by piece. And by the end, we had kind of this nice cohesive event that ended up being zero waste. So waste management is kind of the focal point, right? That's kind of where everyone goes first when they think about a zero waste sustainable wedding. But there's multiple ways you can do it. So for us, we had plated dinner inside. So we just had, compost food waste, but we did have kind of a cocktail hour outside. You can see this is a COVID times wedding. So we had to shrink down our capacity quite a bit, kept everyone outside as much as we could. But for the cocktail hour, we did have compostable plates from World Centric. We had a margarita bar, and we made the decision, something I've seen in the stadium industry as well. If you put more than 2 streams in front of customers, all of a sudden it's way overwhelming. They don't know what to do, and it all ends up going in one. So we shrunk it down to 2 streams for anything that was guest facing, and that was cans, aluminum cans, and compostables. Newterra's great compost partner here in town. You do see one Mountain Dew on top of the compost. I did pick that out. That was my father-in-law who snuck in plastic bottle Mountain Dews. That's not something we serve. But you do have to deal with that sometimes, right? But one thing that was really cool here was it was friends and family. So they know us. They know how conscious we are about this, having come to our home or when we go to their house and tell them about recycling. So it became really cool to see them interact with it and see what we were generating and all that. And we found it really helpful, but it doesn't necessarily work for all events.
So for us, what we found is pretty much along the same lines as Brian said, is that if you have more than 2 streams, it quickly becomes overwhelming. And of course, from the venue perspective, if you're thinking of going in this direction, I would try to keep it to 2 streams if you can't. And a lot of times we can't because we have a lot of different kinds of events here, a lot of different styles of weddings. Some are more elaborate than others. We have found, like, we started out, we thought we could just put out like the trash cans that had like the nice labels and everything. And we thought maybe guests would self-sort. And we kind of learned, as Brian said, it's overwhelming and it doesn't work. And so what we found out that worked really well is we've taken those cans and we put them at the back of our house. So our staff actually floats through the event and they are picking up, as people finish a beer can or something else, they're just kind of trying to be, inconspicuous, but they float through and they pick those things up and then they're making sure that everything gets sorted appropriately. So if there's, a plate or whatever, they're picking that up. We have it all set up so that my staff members actually set it up how they want it each time, but because everybody's a little bit different. But usually, like we've got like the food buckets for Newterra compost because all of the food waste goes to them prior, just in case you don't have access to Newterra or something like that. We actually took everything to a chicken farm. There were some folks that wanted to have all that food waste, and there were certain things that they can't have, like chocolate and avocado. But so we the staff scrapes the plates and then they have ways of just sorting it from there. And then they pick up the plates and glassware and everything and bring it in. We are mostly plastic free. Every once in a while, somebody winds up really wanting plastic cups, like a 1 or a 2 that is recyclable. They'll have those like at dance time. They worry about breaking our stuff. And I totally understand that. There's also biodegradable cups that Newterra can actually take and compost along with their stuff. So that's all super helpful to know as well, as far as just how to limit the waste from a wedding.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll note here. So a lot of times waste management falls on the venue, right? It's not often discussed in pre-event, planning meetings and things like that. So as a client, bringing that up and understanding what they currently have and what you could currently add is super helpful. So our wedding was at the Grand Falloon on Main Street. They had recycling, they recycled cardboard, plastics 1 and 2 and cans. They didn't do composting though at the time. So I had to reach out and arrange for a bin myself to add that. But what was really cool is actually went there a few months ago, started working with them on another project, and they now are composting just from them seeing kind of how simple and easy it was to integrate into an event that is more complicated than a day-to-day restaurant or some of the other things they do. They actually ended up starting composting themselves, which is really cool.
So dishes, plates, and glassware, this is all the fun stuff. So I used to do interior design, so I probably had a little more fun with this than needed. But whenever my husband and I decided to start trying to figure out how to have only one bag of trash at the end of every wedding, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is the plates and glassware. There's tends to be pretty popular still to have like the Chinette plates that are, if you wash them, they're plastic, they look like China, they're not China. But if you flip them over, there's no number on them. And so at that point, you can't recycle it. There's nothing, you went through all this effort of washing it and hoping that you could reuse it, and you can't. So we started collecting all kinds of stuff. So we started with something simple. You can always find mismatched china in thrift stores and stuff like that. And that's probably the cheapest way to start. And then we started getting like the glassware and stuff like that. And so I probably went a little overboard. Some of it's on the table behind me because I forgot to send Brian a slide. But so I wanted to make it in a way so that our couples would always be able to choose whatever they wanted for their wedding and make it look the way they want. And there are lots of rental companies in Chattanooga that have similar stuff. There's Red Roof Farm, there's the Copper Quail, a bunch of them. And so that's actually another good way. There's also bigger outfits like Showtime event rentals and all of that. You can rent your plates and glassware in order to bring it in. So if your venue doesn't provide it, that's an option to you. And then of course, there's compostable plastic, and all of that we kind of touched on a little bit.
Yeah, and so for our wedding, we went kind of a different route. We went very minimalistic. So you can see our little succulent pots there. So we basically bought a silicone mold, and for about a month straight, we were making little concrete planters for succulents. And that was not only the decor, but it was also the wedding gift. So everyone got to take those home with them. And people still send us pictures when they, that they're still alive, at least. People haven't told us if theirs have died off or anything. But we also rented our silverware, plates, glasses, and it made it so easy to just get that delivered, set up. At the end of the night, the caterer cleaned off the dishes, just a light rinse, put them back up and send them back with the rental company. And that right there reduces your waste more than anything. Taking the concept of reuse over recycle when it comes to everything you're putting in front of when you're setting the table for all your guests. So that's kind of what we found there. And then when it comes to beer cans and things like that, even beyond recycling, there's things you can do that make it more than just about recycling. So Habitat, for example, has an aluminum collection program where those rebates go toward their housing projects. So that's a way to take something as simple as recycling and turn it into something that turns into money and something real for someone else. So incorporating those type programs into your event can kind of have an effect beyond just recycling. So decor, this was where I had the most fun. So like I said, I was at home a lot of 2020, working remote or working on this. And I saw how expensive decor could be. And when you'd see it online, it's like, oh, this is gonna be great for the event, but then what are we gonna do with it? We're gonna pack it in a car and it's gonna sit somewhere, or we're gonna have to get rid of it somehow. But also building materials were expensive. And so instead, I got some pallets and kind of got creative to make all of our wedding signs out of these pallets. So you can see a sign there. So we wanted to communicate what our goals were. We had a wedding on Main Street. Everyone was staying on Main Street that came from out of town. had a rehearsal dinner there, had the after party there. So everyone was, even though it was in the middle of town, we had kind of this easy thing where no one was having to drive in addition to our zero waste and using local vendors and stuff like that. So we communicated that to people. And it was really cool to see people see that when they arrived and then bring it up to us, how cool they thought that was, or how, yeah, I didn't realize this was a zero waste wedding and it just doesn't feel like it is at all. So again, think reuse. And so even beyond the wedding, I ended up taking the pallet slats and posts and turned it into an entryway table at our house that you see on the right there. And even on the bottom, it still has the chalk kind of welcoming people to our wedding. So that's something we'll probably never get rid of now, and kind of a memento from our wedding that's really to kind of tell people as they visit.
I absolutely love that, by the way. For me, like this is where I love to just get like so creative with our couples, and where it can be like so much fun. So I know we talked about the toss items. That tends to be one thing. And you can see like in this one, we've had couples that have taken like flower heads. There's always like good, better, best when it comes to things like that. There's biodegradable confetti. It's usually gone for us within a week. There's certain varieties that maybe take 2 weeks, but it's not too bad. Our venue is gravel, so we're able to, it kind of disappears a bit into the gravel pretty quickly. Things like lavender are great and they smell good. So, everything, I mean, like the whole area just smells amazing for like a day around that time. So we always enjoy that. And then when it comes to like decorating the tables and stuff, like we had, like I know I mentioned that their stores earlier, but I wanted to mention this one wedding. They were out of Florida and their theme was Miami Kitsch. And if you've ever been to South Florida, there's like all of these tchotchkes are like all over the place. They had found a bunch of those tchotchkes and they put them on the tables. And in fact, like their cake topper was a pair of kissing avocados. It was the most awesome thing ever. It was just like so much fun because they had so much creativity with it. They had gotten like dried, they brought with them, but they had like the dried palm fronds and stuff like that. If you don't have if you're wanting that kind of theme, you can always just like get a monstera plant or something like that because they look very tropical. You can always get that effect another way. We've had other weddings where one was a geologist. And so they had like geodes on the table. And then they encouraged their guests to, hey, if something from this speaks to you, go ahead and take it home, so I love that decor gives you such an opportunity to show your personalities as a couple. And then, it can also play into being that guest gift that you like to have to show your appreciation for them coming out this way. I know a lot of our weddings are destinations. So if you're having people travel, it's nice to have something to give them too as a memento. So vendors, this is one of my favorite topics. Most vendors, things are pretty green. You can't, change a whole lot about DJs or anything like that because they have their equipment already. They reuse all of that. But the two vendors that I focus the most on are florals and catering. And your florists might be a little bit surprising because you're like, okay, flowers are compostable, right? Well, a lot of them are shipped in from, say, South America and other distant places all over the globe. And so we usually say, try to pick things that are in season. But there's also like several flower farms in the area. In fact, there's one called Creekside that's literally just on the other side of the mountain from us. And so we refer Morgan pretty often because, she's right there. And of course, she's growing her flowers. And so we know exactly where all of those came from. The other thing that's super cool, it's kind of a good movement that's kind of starting to tap more traction in the floral industry is something called foam free. And so what they're looking at is the foam, that florist foam that's used so often is actually full of formaldehyde. And so you can't do much about it. It's kind of toxic. So what they're doing now is they're creating cages out of chicken wire, and then they're stuffing it with straw and hay that they soaked overnight. And so it creates the perfect environment for them to go ahead, make the arrangement they need, however big and elaborate it needs to be. We've seen some that were huge. I mean, covers the entire space, like kind of huge. So there's really like your imagination's the limit, So And we've actually found that it stays, like the flowers stay just as fresh throughout the day in that as they do in that florist foam. So that's been kind of a really cool thing to see. And we know of 2 florists in this area that are doing that. I would love to see more. It's, there's lots of like YouTube programs and stuff like that. Learn how to do it if you wanted to do it for your own event too. And then there's always like on the home front, you can always do those little flower frogs. I don't know if you've seen them. They're so cool. They're actually very collectible. I kind of have a lot of them myself, but so that's a pretty easy thing to do. And then our biggest thing is catering. Now, food waste is a big deal. We've already talked about, like, we can have Nuterra, we have the buckets. We set aside a bucket for the caterers to use while they're here. And we kind of have a lot of steps that we talk to a caterer who's new to us, as far as like what we expect of them and how to help them be more green while they're here and kind of fit in our little box. And so so we talked about the food waste, and then there's also like the chafing dishes. We really prefer that they use real ones that, you just wash and reuse indefinitely. I know that a lot of caterers are still wanting to use the disposable ones, and they look like they're aluminum, but it turns out that a lot of them are not aluminum. You can still buy some that are aluminum, and so they cost a little bit more. Make sure like you talk to your caterer way ahead of time so that they have time to order that one. And then whenever that you're finished washing it and you take it to the recycling facility, make sure that you show it to the guy that's working there in Chattanooga, because he will stop you because most of them are not recyclable. So you need to be able to turn it over and show them, no, this one really is aluminum and it can go in this container. So, but that's definitely, those 2 vendors are definitely the ones we work with the most.
Yeah, so the big thing here we found is look for partners. So most assuredly, if you're planning an event and you start talking to vendors, someone will tell you, this is how we do it. And it's not going to fit with your zero waste sustainable goals. So you have to approach it. You have to really own that. And approach it as, this is how we want to do it. It is possible, and we want to work with you on it. If they're not willing, then there are other vendors or other venues that will. We went through this process planning our wedding when we went to some more typical wedding venues downtown that are very kind of cut and dry. This is how we do it. This is how everything's taken care of. And here's how much it costs. Versus finding a venue like the Grand Falloon, who was, this is how much it costs, and we'll work with you on whatever you want to do. I was like, all right, sign us up. So same goes with catering. Certain people do it a certain way. If you have goals that are zero waste or sustainability, be willing to own that and communicate that and look for partners who want to work with you on that. We work with Taquiera Jalisco just down the road, and they were all about it. They haven't typically used compostable serviceware and all that, but they were willing to do it because it was something that was important to us, and they wanted to be a part of something cool like that, and support local businesses. That was something that we kind of made a point to find vendors as much as we could on Main Street, off Main Street, within that area, to really kind of bring that community together for this. And then the wedding cake we have there, so that was a friend of mine who does cakes for weddings made that, and she had the idea of kind of going in her backyard and looking for some logs and sticks that she could kind of decorate around the cake with that. And I had to put a picture of the cake pops because they were amazing. I think I had like 10 of them. So. And so our general message is with this is you have the power. There's vendors out there in Chattanooga. Chattanooga has a great culture around recycling, composting, and being environmentally conscious, just given where it sits in Tennessee and all that, and organizations like Green Spaces. So you have the power to do this. The resources are out there. The biggest thing is just owning it, putting together the plan, and then finding partners to help you execute it. And I love this picture as well from Oakley. So yeah, with that, we'd love to have a discussion, open up to questions, or talk about whatever you all would like to.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your experience, both as a participant and a vendor on those side of things. If you guys have questions, let's go ahead and put them in the chat box and we can read them out, or I can unmute you if that's the case as well. While we're getting started on that, Cris, I was wondering, do you often have folks that approach your venue and they don't have any idea about your practices, and do you face any pushback from that in terms of like, no, this is how we do things here?
I would say we've only had a couple of vendors ever that pushed back a little bit. And I know it sounds kind of mean, but we were kind of like, well, if you're going to work an event here, then this is how it is. This is something that is very important to Dave and I, and we're not going to let you just create a bunch of waste.
Yeah, I totally respect that. It goes back to what you guys were saying. You got to own what your goal is.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, most of the time, I think most guests really don't realize that we're a green venue. I don't think they really realize that there's anything out of the ordinary going on with us sorting things in the back. I think we just look like we're more of a full service space. And so I think most would be surprised to find out that we're actually a green venue at all, really.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and I think that's the true test of putting on a good sustainable event, is when the guests don't even realize anything's different. I know, like my parents, for example, they recycle, but they're not zero waste by any means. They're like, wow, you know, I thought there was going to be like no silverware, no cups, like, and that's just not the case. So it really is possible to accomplish both a great event that meets the needs of all your guests and be zero waste and sustainable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I heard you say, Brian, that I think is, you know, part of what really elevates the experience is like all the stories, right? All the great stories about, you know, where all these things came from, where they go to, and, you know, how those improve people's experience and, you know, really elevate it. And it's like, you know, nobody wants to see a like overflowing trash can, right? So like the downside of not doing this can create a really negative impression of people's experience. Like, yeah, I mean, it was a cool event, but it was like, you know, sort of trashy. It's like, so, but, you know, Cris, the way that y'all just sort of make it invisible, you know, to where it's, you know, not something that they have to actively think about. It's also not something that they, you know, creates a negative, right? Of like seeing all that trash and like, you know, thinking about it. When we do events like for our like the chili cook-off, you know, Brian, you made a really good point about like when you have more than just one or two waste streams, people can get really overwhelmed. You know, we have tried all sorts of things at the chili cook-off, and you know, the most important is just making sure that everything that's there is compostable, so that basically everything can go in the compost. But yeah, we still have to keep an eye on it, like you mentioned with the Mountain Dew bottle. You know, there's still things that can sort of slip in there. Brian, what are y'all, I guess, you know, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you know, that's like a whole other scale of, you know, zero waste. What are some of the things that transfer from this conversation to your day job in terms of y'all trying to get such a large venue to zero waste?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the same things. It's just more vendors and more people and different experiences. So you know, we have a goal of getting to 90% conversion rate 365 days a year. It's very difficult with certain events and clients. So we take kind of a very segmented approach to it. So we have one approach for our concourses and concessions where everything's compostable. There's 2 streams. Post event, we're picking the bowl twice to get all the compostables first, and then get all the bottles and cans second. But we have a different approach with our suites, where they have kind of a different experience. Same in the clubs and then our backyard. So we try to break it down as much as we can to try to slowly inch up to that level. Currently, we're in the 70-75% range. So that last 15% is the hardest. And unfortunately, if we have a certain conference from the convention center that spills into the backyard for a dinner or something, that could be enough to bump us back down. So we're really trying to really hone in on it in that sense. But the way we've approached it is just breaking it down as much as we can and targeting all those different areas.
I really like that, a lot of things are transferable, but not everything is a one size fits all solution. And you have to, every event is different. You have to have that critical thinking and different approaches for different audiences. So another question that we just got is, have costs increased due to these no waste practices?
Yes. For us, it's definitely, we have a pretty significant investment in plates and glassware, probably a ridiculous sum. And then it's not just the inventory itself that we have, but also the staff that's on site to sort everything, to wash everything. We had to get storage, so we have to pay that every month. And then we've also got, we had to add on a dish room specifically so that we could handle everything and, wash and sanitize everything appropriately. So there was not just that addition, but then you had to have the equipment. So like we have a high temp dishwasher that we named Shelby. Shelby does a load. She does a rack of glasses in 2 minutes and uses 1.2 gallons of water. We really appreciate it on the wedding events where we have like 5 different kinds of glasses going. So there could be like 500 glasses to wash. We adore Shelby. So yes, a lot of our overhead definitely increased by doing this.
But one of the things, I'll note with that is demand for compostable products is rising so fast that prices that we talked about 5 years ago being substantially higher, they're going to come down as demand grows and supply grows, and this becomes more of a norm. So I think there's definitely some good things on the horizon there with ball aluminum cups and different things like that. So I think everything's looking good for the future for it to be more of a standard every day without substantially larger costs.
Do either of you know of a local bakery that does cupcakes with compostable paper?
I actually don't, but I imagine almost any of the local bakeries, if you talk to them and said that this is what you wanted, they would probably be accommodating and do that.
It may be one of those situations where it's like, well, you make it with these that I provide for you.
That definitely could be one of those things. But, it could be one of those things that a lot of people just don't really even think about. Like a lot of people probably just think, oh, well, it's paper, it's compostable as it is. And so they might have not realized, oh, the dyes that are in these that are pink or something is maybe not so great. But I think, yeah, if you provided them or you were able to say, hey, this is a brand that I found, would you be willing to use that instead? I think a lot of companies, like there's Sierra's Cake Works that we work with a whole lot. Bee's Sweets, I think would probably do it. I think there are some folks in the area who would definitely be very accommodating.
And thanks for chiming in, Michael, who shared that most white paper cupcake liners are compostable already.
Yeah, along those lines, Michael, is there, anything that you'd like to add from, you've obviously seen a wide spectrum of attempts at zero waste events. What are some of the sort of best and worst things that you've seen?
Well, I mean, as far as the compostable stuff like the paper, and when you look at the dyes on things, they don't make a lot of dyes with harmful metals in them anymore, and the amount of which would come in a container is not going to hurt the composting process, and it's going to disappear. So most of that's going to be okay. I mean, everything that they've talked about today is stuff that we see when we do events, all over Chattanooga. We just did the film festival, and it was the same thing. You have to put the signage up. We were walking around pulling stuff out because you can put all the signage in the world and people kind of still go about their normal routine of just doing whatever they can. So make it easy, right? The easier that you make it. I mean, I think that, when Cris said nobody really has a choice. This is the way we do it. And that is the way to make it successful. If you say, well, we're going to do this event, but you can do this and you can do this, you're already setting it up a little bit for failure, because now you have to deal with those products. When if you would have said it has to be this, it's going to be easier on you and everyone else involved that's trying to do that in the process. So yeah. And just so everybody knows, though, biodegradable and compostable, there's the thing that I heard that's, I guess you got to get deep into it. Everything that is compostable is biodegradable, but not everything biodegradable is compostable. So, you really got to look into, when you're buying things or you're trying to do an event, that you don't get greenwashed by products. There was a bag that I found the other day that on Amazon said it was BPI compostable, but it's coming from China, and they could have just put that on their labeling just because it makes you feel better, when in reality they're not certified compostable. So, working with Cris and Brian and working with Nuterra, I mean, we're going to help do that for you, the heavy lifting as far as making sure everything is correct. So then you don't have to worry about whether what you got or didn't get will be compostable in the process.
That's actually another good question, Michael. So some people, especially on the, Brian did a lot of sort of DIY, zero waste strategies on his. Talk a little bit about the difference between commercially compostable and like backyard compostable.
And so that's a good one too. When you look at paper plates, and they call it like a bag ass plate or to-go box and things that you might see at events, those could be backyard compostable because they're paper. You don't have to really break anything down. It's going to break down in a home compost system, just like you would your veggies and things like that. In an industrial compost system, we can take everything, meat, dairy. Cris was saying how, cakes, some of the places that they would go to with the chickens didn't want a lot of the sweets in the cakes, and some of them might not want the meat. We take everything because we compost so much at one time that we can break everything down. We'll hit temps that a home composter can't. So then you see those compostable cups that are clear that say compostable on them, but they look and feel just like a plastic cup. If you throw that on the side of the street, that's going to be a compostable cup for 1,000 years because it will never hit temperature to break down. So, those kind of cups, anything that looks like it's plastic that says it's compostable, has to go to a facility to actually be broken down correctly. So, you could still do an event where you can put everything in your home compost system. You're just going to have to go a little bit more extreme with the things that you can and can't get. But those products still are all, when someone asked about the pricing, compostable products are still more expensive than anything else out there. So you just already have to know off the bat, if this is the direction you're going, it is going to cost a little bit more money. But at the end of the day, we had a picture of what we did at that film festival, and we brought like 4 or 5 65-gallon containers of compostable material back to our site. We worked with Brian and helped do some of the cans and stuff. We took all the cans for Habitat for Humanity from that. And then we had one Slim Jim can liner that wasn't even wasn't full of trash from a 3-day film festival. So, it's, look at that story that you can get by doing something like that. It's important.
That's awesome. We have a question here, Cris and Brian. What are the next steps, ideas that you two might have toward zero waste efforts in your respective industries? So I guess what's next on your agenda?
I know for myself, I would really love to talk to other wedding venues because the event industry can be so insanely wasteful. I would love to talk to other wedding venues and say, here's a place to start. Here's how we did it, just really just help them look at their waste streams and how we can help them with that. And then, we also worked with green spaces, obviously. And so we learned more ways that we could reduce the energy use and the water use and all of that. All of that adds up to being greener. So that's definitely one of my goals, is to really start like working with other venues.
Brian?
And yeah, so the biggest thing for us, so as a sporting venue or as the Tivoli, you're able to kind of control your waste stream, and that almost everything that comes in your containers is something you provided the guest. The one area we have the biggest challenge is our tailgate areas, where people are bringing stuff from home, directly from the grocery store, that's likely not compostable. How do we start kind of getting to them and creating partnerships that help encourage and change behavior that way? That's definitely our biggest challenge. We'll probably target our soccer audience first, our college football audience last. They're the ones we have the most problems with. But a way to do that is by partnering with vendors like Newterra, Publix, other brands that are able to kind of sell that message and maybe even create incentives or challenges that helps encourage that type of behavior and hope that it spreads.
Do we have any more questions before we wrap up? Well, Brian, Cris, thank you so much for your time. We are so grateful for your time here on this Wednesday afternoon now. And if you guys have any questions for them, their emails are on the slide. This was recorded and we'll post it on our website and share with our members. Thank you again, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.